For me, it's like a podcast is distributed on RSS.
Yeah.
Netflix, if you're not distributing your podcast on RSS, you're not a podcast. You're television.
Just make the ads another joke. So people want to watch it to see the comedy too. And then by accident, you'll sell more.
I'm not going to go gouge someone for as much money as I can out of the gate. I need to figure out how to scale this so that they're staying on. We've had brands that have been on for, our entire existence, over 9 years. And to me, I think that's a credit to the way that they did do the ads.
We're with Giancarlo Bizzarro. And I wanted to ask you about your last name.
Yes.
Because I looked it up.
It's insane.
You have a great name.
Yeah,
thank you.
You have the best name.
But do you feel at this age of your life that you're living up to the definition of your last name?
Well, my last name, my great-grandfather ran the theater and the circus in southern Italy. Mm-hmm. And so you can't really help what your last name is, right? Mm-hmm. You can change your first name, but your last name you're kind of stuck with. Mm-hmm. My father, who is a language professor, who taught Latin American literature and Italian, he sort of etymologically would go back and say that back in this is his saying, I don't know if it's true or not, but he'd say like back in like the 15th and 16th century, like the times of Dante, right? Mm-hmm. Like as Dante was writing for the general populace, because most people were still going between Latin and like what was sort of the more bastardized version that became Italian. He said that Bizzarro meant generous. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's true. Mm-hmm. We all know what it means now. Yeah. I love my name. I don't care. Like I don't think I am bizarre in terms of weird, but I definitely like to associate with people who are different.
The definition that I was gravitating toward was eccentric and whimsical, and so not necessarily bizarre, but just like different,
You're like, do you like whimsy?
I try to be like, the life of a room or a party sometimes when I can be. I feel like I try to bring a positive energy.
Well, you're one of my favorite executive salespeople in our industry.
It's crazy that you're that, actually.
Right? Mm. We did all of that intro and we got to
yeah, that would never happen. It would be like the first thing they would say.
I think you're also our first business guy.
Oh, great. Business.
On the podcast.
Well, I'm happy to talk all things business.
Which is fun.
Can I ask you, can we start off with a question?
Absolutely.
What was your first impression of Dane, and how do you see Dane in the podcast industry?
Dane is like the coolest person in the industry. He can kind of go in and out of every single scenario. I think that everyone wants to be connected or friends with him, and he's got a good opinion, an honest opinion, and he doesn't withhold that opinion, which is something that is refreshing as somebody who's also likes to be overtly direct sometimes to the detriment of what people would like us to say. Yeah. So I respect that about Dane.
Hi, that's nice.
Yeah.
It's just that he's so modest. So I've been asking everybody that knows him from the industry.
I just don't know how to accept a compliment.
No, I don't. Yeah. I kind of think that's okay. I think if you're really good at accepting compliments, it's a little weird. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would agree with that 100%.
Yeah.
How do you accept compliments? And I think specifically around the show that you, God's Banker, that you produce. I'm sure you got a lot of good jobs and amazing. We loved it. Does that just go right through you, or are you able to sit with?
That was one that I really felt deep inside because it was a period of time where I wasn't necessarily able to sell podcast ads, which is kind of a crazy thing for me, having done this my whole career. Mm-hmm. I was in a position where I wasn't allowed to sell. I was basically you're allowed to consult people who are selling your show. And so that entire period was insane for me because I get a call from this guy from New York. I didn't even know who he was. And he was basically hey, can you put me in touch with whoever's taking over development at Crooked? Because our head of development had left. He called me up and he's basically listen to this show. And I'm yeah, I remember greenlighting this a couple of years ago and saying that it was the peak of limiteds. We had just done Wind of Change, which was really successful with Patrick Radden Keefe. And I was like, listen, like, you know, I don't know like where things are at. Like, I'm kind of trying to sell like newsletters and video. Like, I'm not allowed to sell podcast ads. And he's like, you're Italian, right? And I was like, yeah. He's like, will you please listen to this? And he sends it to me. I was like, all right, I got nothing better to do. I'm going to listen to this show. And it was finished, right? And we had greenlit the version in English. And for me to listen to it, it was this story about essentially this person who's found hanging in the Blackfriars Bridge in England. And basically, the City of London police, not Scotland Yard, mind you, they said he committed suicide. He was just hanging. And like these Italian authorities were like, no, this guy's a fugitive on the run. Like he was whacked, essentially. He was murdered. And I listened to this story, and he had all these original interviews that he himself, like me as somebody who's bilingual, he got firsthand from these, I don't want to say mafiosi because I'm not sure if they were in the mafia or not, but these very like sketchy people, and it never been done before. And they were in Italian. He was translating it into English. And I was like, oh my God, we have to make this in Italian. Like, I don't know any Italian podcast companies. I'm just going to Google like, who are the Italian podcast companies? And I found a couple. And when it got made, like, I didn't think it would be a hit. Like, I thought that like, okay, this is just something that, you know, is going to happen. We actually ended up going with the people that were not as like critically acclaimed and didn't have the funding. And what I liked about them is they were hungry and they really wanted to make this, and they didn't have the timing of most Italian things, which is very slow and bureaucratic. And when it got made in Italian and it just took off, like I just remember going back to Italy for the first time, and, you know, I was in a small family run hotel, and the person who was working the front desk, like, you know, somebody had told them that I worked in podcasting, and I'm listening to this podcast, and he shows me, and it's that show. Wow. And he's like, this is like, I've never listened to a podcast before.
The thing that I've been thinking a lot about from like an executive level is the shrinking of like executive salaries that are currently available in the market today. 2 years ago, well, not 2022, but like before 2022, you know, you could probably get, you know, you give me what the numbers are, 200, 300K, maybe more, depending on what role you're in. There aren't many of those. Is that true?
I think it just depends on what you're looking to do. I think what you've seen is the contraction of networks kind of like coming together, the mergers and acquisitions, the sort of people being picked up. I think it's a lot harder to kind of have a creative development type role, which is a shame, right? Like everything these days is now, and you know, we started off with like a limited series story, and personally, even as a salesperson, those are the ones that I like to consume the best in our industry. Like they're the ones that drew people into podcasting, right? Like Serial, God's Banker was Italy's Serial. Like those aren't getting made anymore, not at the same propensity. I mean, I think that like I went to Tribeca and I got to listen to a few of these, and I think that that was something that was wonderful about that festival, was the sense that like they're still trying to promote this. I think that with our creative execs leaving who were focused on that, I think when I was at WME for a year and they were really focused on this like podcast to IP pipeline, and that didn't necessarily work out. Like I don't know if you're going to have anyone from, I'm going to botch the name, Q-Code Daylight on, but I think that those kinds of jobs have kind of shrunk, and I think that's not just podcasting in general. I think that's the entire media ecosystem, right? As we're seeing more, and I hate this term, creator-focused content, right? Like, but
why do you hate that term?
I just don't like. Listen, everyone is talented. Like, I don't want to necessarily like disparage that word. I just think that, you know, there's a differentiating factor with something that is, and as somebody who comes from a history of theater and circus, right, like performance, right, versus actual like substance. And I think that podcasting is kind of shifting towards more of a substance ecosystem, and that's why you're losing the, I don't want to say like the curation roles in podcasting, but the people that would actually be there to say like, this is a story that needs to be told, this is how we're going to make it. That's kind of blending now with more like, how do we get this on different, you know, vertical video and all these other kind of facets.
Do you like the idea of like podcasting as an industry merging into entertainment, Hollywood, something else?
I mean, it is TV now. So like honestly, like we're on TV, we're on MS Now. Like we did a licensing deal, which is crazy to
Crooked
me.
Media.
Yeah. Excuse me. Crooked Media is, we're on today, Saturdays. And for them, like, I think the first month we started, it was their best month with 25 to 45 audience in like the last, I don't want to misquote this, but I think it was 4 years. I think it's okay. I think it should be like what I try to hopefully induce is it should be another golden age where the shows that we're creating get picked up for these other media channels and verticals, because, you know, executives at those companies think that, hey, like, you know, people are actually consuming this content in a way that we need to be forward thinking about. And like, you know, the 65 plus crowd that's watching The View or whatever they're watching on regular television, that needs to be replaced with something that's a little bit more mainstream so that we can maintain the advertiser relationships. With that being said, one of the benefits of podcasting was the fact that it was open sourced and it didn't have to comply with FCC regulations. You can say whatever the heck you wanted to. And so from that perspective, you know, we are becoming more corporatized, right? So
what are the main mechanisms for making money in podcasting that we're seeing that is happening? Maybe we just like,
do we want to go all the way back to the start, or do we want to start where we're currently in the marketplace?
Let's like touch on the back end, but let's like today, like how are
so like in the back end, like I was at an ad agency, like, you know, in a WeWork, like one of the first employees there called Oxford Road. Back in the day, we made it up as we went along. We basically just being like, hey, we'll give you some money if you throw a 60-second read in here and give us a, you know, a prime spot in the episode. And, you know, I remember convincing people that like, hey, there's no measurement on this, but like we can track it using a landing page or a promo code, and we'll see what's going on. And based off of how many conversions, orders, or site visits you get, like we can continue to run. And that was, you know, 12 years ago at this point, a little bit, or give or take. And I think like where we're at today, it's like so fragmented in the sense that we have those same types of ads that I used to buy. Like those are what generally are the main revenue source for shows, networks, big behemoth like Sirius's and Spotify's. But then you also have programmatic ad revenue from audio, RSS audio. You have AdSense video revenue from YouTube. You have whatever Spotify is giving you that's very difficult to quantify sometimes, but it is money there. You have subscription. You can do YouTube Premium. You can do sort of like a Patreon type model, Supercast, supporting cast. There are all these different subscription services for RSS audio. We're in Substack right now. We have Crooked Media has a Friends of the Pod where like, you know, you get basically like you can only get episodes of certain like bonus content. We've got like a series with one of our hosts basically on polling that you can only listen to if you subscribe. So there are these different kind of facets that kind of lean in. Obviously you mentioned licensing before, like you can do television licensing now. You're starting to see shows.
What's the calculation for that? Like how do they determine the value of?
I think they're kind of where we were 12 years ago.
Is it a per minute thing?
They're trying to figure it out. I think it's similar to where like, you know, a HeadGum or a Sirius license shows, right? It's over a determinate period of time. They see if it works. Crooked we launched a fast channel called Sane TV. That's been an entire endeavor. It's very difficult to get into these kinds of.
And is that Roku and
right
Tubi,
now we're Amazon Prime Video and we're just about to get on Fire TV. I can't talk about the other two that we're talking to because it's not official yet. But, you know, that is also kind of a black box because it's just total consumable hours. So from a network's perspective, you're looking at all these different facets and saying, how do I monetize, right? If you're an independent creator, it's, I mean, like in the past, you just grab a mic, you know, you wouldn't even have cameras. You just record what you wanted to. You'd be sitting with people that you want to hang out with in a room. And if your show popped, like you could go sell ads against it, right? I think, you know, the fragmentation has been really challenging. I have a lot of empathy for a lot of creators who are trying to do this on their own because in the past it was a lot easier and now it's become a lot more complicated.
Why has it become complicated? I'm sorry if I missed it.
I think like, you would just upload an MP3 or, WAV audio file on RSS and it would publish to all these different platforms.
Bake in the
open
ad.
source. Yeah, you'd bake in the ad. Now it's like there's a lot of different facets.
Geo-targeting
right?
Canada.
Correct. I have one of 4 attribution companies, Pixels, to track, on audio.
Yeah.
You can't track that on video. So like that's something that now advertisers are like, well, if you have a video audience that's bigger than your audio audience, then hypothetically, like we can't see what's happening. So maybe this isn't necessarily the media channel we want to put money into, right? We'd rather put it into digital. So these are the kinds of conversations that us as an industry are trying to actively work on. And I think that it's still, in my mind, like the best channel to create content for, because it can be repurposed. But if you're an independent creator, to keep track of all of these things becomes extremely complicated if you're just doing this at a base level.
What is the role of like a traditional podcast network in an era where increasingly creators are establishing their own like networks or groupings of shows? Have you seen like a decline in like the traditional podcast? Like you join a podcast network if you have a big enough show, and like, you do that for a couple of years, you maybe hop to a different network if you want to like explore the market. It seems like some talent are saying, I can just maybe absorb a lot of the production and marketing and maybe even sales resources and take that all in-house. And
I think like the benefit of being with a traditional network is you get the know-how. If they're a large enough network, hypothetically, you get their marketing resources. And if you're launching something new, you should be able to launch it with them in a way that makes sense. I think that if you're a show I personally think that shows that are starting out now are at such a disadvantage from where they were, say, like 4, 5, 6, 10 years ago. That would be something that I think you'd want a traditional network for. The sales organization, I think it just depends on the size of the network, right? Like if you're at a network that has, after Oxford Road went to a startup, and at the time we had about 50 shows, and then we scaled up to about 100, right? Like to be fully transparent, like you're not going to prioritize 60 of those shows unless somebody asks for them. You're going to go for the ones that are the highest, and you're going to try to bundle in the stuff that's there. With that said, right, like Crooked, we're really lucky because we have a very good sort of curated list of shows. And I think like the way we set ourselves up specifically, and I did this intentionally, was to be essentially an ad agency, even though we're salespeople. And we modeled ourselves off of what I had at Oxford Road, which was I have accounts people, right? I have ad ops folks. I have a robust we have a robust ad ops team. We have 4 people doing ad ops for, a couple dozen shows. But to me, that means huge. That things are going correct. And I think that when you have things publishing in many different facets and platforms, like, the ad agencies are going to go through and they're going to have checks and balances. We have our own checks and balances internally. I don't know how many networks do that. You have to
go to them. Hey, a mistake happened.
We'd rather be preemptive about that than have a reactionary opinion from somebody we're working with. But I think like the benefits of being with a network are you get these kinds of, ideally if it's a good one, you get these kinds of relationships. You're able to kind of lean on their experience having done this across a lot of shows. If you're with somebody that's very big and you're not one of their top performers, you might not get that. But I think what we try to do, at least with all of our shows across the board, and we have some sort of partnership shows that we deal with, is just try to be as transparent, honest, and lean into what works. Because in my mind, and I think that I know you agree with this, it's best to, knowledge is meant to be shared. Like if we're hoarding knowledge, what are we doing? Like to me, the beauty of this industry was the fact that it was open. And I feel like a lot of the people in this space, at least at the beginning, and, a lot of the good people in this space share information. And I think that's a benefit. Obviously there is competition, but I think that it's one of the media industries that is a little bit more collaborative than the rest.
Do you think that's because of the nature of the type of media, where it's sort of transparent and authentic and all of those things, that they prioritize that, the executives and the people within.
I think they have, right? But what one of my biggest fears is that as things become less open sourced, right, that transparency goes away. And when that transparency goes away, then you're left with questions of what's going on. You don't necessarily have the answers, and the only people that can answer it are the people that actually are controlling that. And I think that I want to solve the problem in my head. And if I can't do that, or if people are blocking me from doing that, then I'm going to come out and say it directly to them, or openly and publicly. And sometimes that gets me in trouble, but other times I think that it's meant to be said.
What does getting in trouble look like for you?
I mean,
right?
I think that there's been moments where I've said things.
Slap on the wrist, or?
Yeah, I think some people have called me out. I'd say a couple of times at Crooked, when we had a partner that we were working with, I was told that I was being extremely difficult to work with and direct, and not leaning into the practices that they wanted to kind of put forth into the marketplace. But when those practices aren't going to help them or the people that they're trying to kind of make revenue towards, it is okay to shout what you believe. And then if you're proven inevitably that was the right decision by data, time, what happens, then I think that, it may be scary in the moment to say the right thing, but it's the right thing to do, regardless of whether or not people agree with it or not.
Yeah, that's what I get in trouble too.
You and I are very similar in that regard.
It's I'm going to rub against the people who think that I'm on their team, the company that I'm a part of. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but I'm on the creators team, in most cases. And I'm going to argue with the creators too. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, we argue with everyone.
Yeah.
But, dialogue and conversation is what helps bring things forward and gets to solutions. And it might not be the best fit for everyone, but if you can compromise and get to a place where it's this looks like it makes sense, and here's all the data that backs it, and you have a creator who says I don't want to do ads, and you're like, well, you can't create this show without doing ads, or you should try to lean into these kinds of things for your show because we have 10 shows that it's worked for, even though you only want to make a 5-minute video version of your show. That's not considered a podcast in the advertising side. These are tough conversations. I've had these with creators. And then inevitably they do what you tell them to do. And, a year and a half later, they're very happy about having followed those kind of decisions.
Where does creators' sense of maybe morality or fit in all this? We had Meredith Lynch on, and she told us that she turned down $56,000 from a Kalshi or Polymarket partner. We have sports betting. It seems, and this is probably the case with advertising everywhere, the people spending the most are the people that you probably don't want to work with.
Correct. From our end, we are very, very particular about who we work with. I can safely say that I have turned down more money than I would know what to do with from some industries. I don't necessarily want to name names.
I was going to say, which ones?
I'll just give you one. I'll give you one because I don't really care about them, and I'm not on there. I'm private.
I'm not listening to this show.
Meta basically came to us in 2020, and we're basically we want access to Vote Save America. We will sponsor your podcast. We'll give you, and they didn't even care about impressions. We'll give you $10 million to be on Crooked.
Yep.
And I remember going to the founders and being that is more money than we could ever know what to do with. That's an insane amount of money. We should consider this. And I just remember having this conversation with the founders, and they personally vet every single one of their advertisers, which is insane to me. And then if it is approved by them, then it goes to the individual shows. So they're very particular about who runs and who doesn't on the network. Our ad ops team goes and listens to all of our programmatic ads that are within the episodes that they download. And that they're not always there.
Yep.
And we block stuff. There's, on the programmatic side, you could have a gun company that's going in as sporting goods. And it'll make it into our content. And we will immediately go and flag that, take it out. But on the Meta example, that was one where we had a lot of conversations about, and they were just like, no, like we don't like what we're seeing on this. We think that this could be used in a way that takes all of our, volunteers, because we have a political arm of the company. I guess it's its own separate 501c3 now, but like it has been, but like that essentially could have been used in the data to retarget. And I think there was a book that came out about how Facebook was basically using that in one of the elections. And, that could have absolutely played into that.
Been really valuable information for them.
Correct. And so I remember turning that down, and there's
probably is worth more than 10 million.
Correct. And so from our perspective, like the money at the beginning looks really great. And then when you actually willed it down, it was like, wow, like we have a very big outside influence on politics in this country. If we allow this to get out, like that's a big issue. Probably should not have shared that story, but I don't care. I'll get in trouble. I'll get a wrist slap.
No, Meta is known to have done a lot of things. I mean, there was a time where they were going out to creators and giving them a lot of money to basically bring them to San Francisco and go into a room and record their body movements and like basically create AI versions of themselves as avatars for their platforms. And I think there was like a clause in that where it's essentially like, we can't control what happens after. Basically once we like download this information, train our models to like use your likeness, like from there, like what happens. And here's a lot of money to say yes to that.
What's crazy from a monetization perspective is now what we're seeing, right, is like I'm getting asked in briefs that like, hey, like we want to use your content in UGC, like we want to be able to promote it. And that's using Meta, right? And so I think us as an industry, if we want to kind of at least maintain relevance and not have people just use our ads that are then created into whitelisted, self-promoted things on Meta, we need to provide visibility into what's happening. And we don't help each other when you have video sort of hosting providers that don't allow the pixels that RSS, which is open source, allow. And because from our perspective, like we solved audio like 4 or 5 years ago, and it was scaling, and then video kind of took off. And so from this point forward, right, like you're seeing consumption kind of rise on video and stay kind of, I don't want to say stagnant, but flatline, maybe a little bit down on RSS, which is audio. And if we're going to be able to continue that growth or at least compete, we need these video channels to come in and say, hey, like we have a universal source, or we can accept all of these things. But for them, right, it's such a small portion of their revenue stream, whether it be, a music serving platform that's gone to video or Google's YouTube, right? Like we're not the big thing on their radar.
Investing like engineer resources to like do anything with podcasting is tough.
Exactly.
Or video even.
Is it tough to get money from people that are unethical in 1,000 different ways? Like, in other words, sometimes I feel like the only companies offering money are the bad guys, we'll call them. Yeah. So my question is just like...
You can name names.
No, but I mean like the poly market and stuff like that. Like, I guess my question is really just like, in this, where we are financially and culturally and societally, what it seems like you have to kind of bend your morals a bit too.
I think a lot of networks are doing it. I've spoken with sort of our peers, and we've, up until this point, all kind of collaboratively pushed away at this money. I think the challenge is, though, is when you're seeing everyone else kind of make this money, right? It becomes very difficult, because then you don't have the ability to make other shows. You don't have the ability to hire people. And so like you're seeing the people who are taking this money then utilizing it to grow themselves on other platforms. And so for us, it's like there is a competing interest. We thankfully have not had to do any of these types of deals, and I'm really grateful to like the founders and our CEO for being very like supportive of us doing things the right way. But from a selling progressive news, like I'm always going in with one hand tied behind my back, because I know that like the people selling comedy, sports, like what have you, they don't care, right?
No, they don't give a shit.
They're going to take whatever's there, right? Like I've had conversations with these companies. I've definitely been reverse sold by a lot of these companies, and it's sort of like, what is the balance here, right?
Yeah.
Is there some way that we could work with a company that's doing things a little bit differently than the other ones, even though we don't necessarily agree with them? Because from our perspective, we're not going to like put on kitty gloves and report on them soft if we decide to work with them. We have to still be able to be objective. Yeah. And I think that's the challenge that I'd say at least news is facing right now, as you're seeing newsrooms around the country kind of go down, local newspapers. Like there's a really good local thing here called LA Material. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Yeah. I'm really hopeful that they can be successful, but they're mainly a subscription model, right? Yeah. And I think that's what you're starting to see. Like I follow a lot of these sort of upstart news companies around the country.
LA Taco too.
Yeah, that one. You know, I like Status. I think what the Bulwark is doing is interesting. Midas Touch, right? Like these are our contemporaries. They're technically our competitors, right? But these are conversations that I'm sure all of us at the same level are having on the news side. It's like you see CNN, like Harry Enton, like every single hit, there's a predictive marketplace that's sponsoring it, right? And
how much does the audience's opinion of the shows themselves regarding the ads and stuff comes into play?
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. And I'll tell you why, because our audience takes action, right? Our objective is to educate people, but also entertain them, because some of the subject matters we're covering are not like
super interesting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so like, and then ultimately inspire them to take action. So like, I can tell you, like, I saw a box of Magic Spoon outside, right? Like when I walked in here, like we've had people reach out to us being like, Magic Spoon has, you know, milk or, you know, milk proteins that's very harmful for animals. And I'm thinking to myself, like, if I can't take Magic Spoon, like we're not going to be able to be funded as a company.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like
there has a line you have to figure out is what I'm.
We've got a Discord. People write about the ads all the time. There's some stuff that comes in where it's like, you know, we really have to be conscientious about who we're working with, because people will reach out to us. They'll tweet at the founders sometimes. What we can't control is programmatic. I think that's the craziest thing, is that's the one you should be able to control the most.
What stack are you on? Are you with AdsWiz? Are you with R19?
We're with Audio Boom, and I think their stack takes in Triton, AdsWiz, and probably all of the above. If I'm not. I can't speak to their tech, but that's where we're currently running. But for the most part, we try to block categories. I think we've always blocked political ads. I remember when, like, you know, Cuomo was running against Mamdani, and I would get calls from Cuomo's campaign people being like, we'll give you whatever you want. And I was like, I can't do this. You know, we're not getting involved in primaries. But from our perspective, right, like, after the primary season is over, like this year, we're really, we're actually going to take like money from some of these things. We're going to pre-approve a list of, you know, candidates, organizations, because what we realized in 2024 is that our side was like, what's a podcast? Let's just go on Call Her Daddy and spend however much money to redo a suite in Las Vegas to make it look like her studio. And I was like, I remember just pulling my hair out, because before I was in podcast, I was in political media consulting. And I remember going back to the place I worked when I first started working in podcasts, and these people would laugh at me. They'd be like, you went from doing television campaigns for political candidates to doing what? Like people talking on mics? This is not going to go anywhere. I was like, guys, I don't think you understand. Like, this is growing. Like, I'm seeing it firsthand, like on the ad agency side and on the sales side. And I feel like at least our side of the political aisle, we did a terrible job of that in 2024. And so we've tried to kind of at least educate these folks.
Okay, so that's interesting. What would you have done differently if you were
in 2024
on the Harris team?
I don't want to disparage a way former place but they did a lot of, I think they were the consultants for that campaign. And so these are the people who are making fun of me on podcasts. I would have put her on shows. I would have put Tim Waltz on New Heights. Like that to me is a own sort of like, it's ridiculous that he didn't go on that show, because he probably could have gone on, talked high school football coach. Not that they would have won, but like the problem with the campaign, other than the fact that they had 100 days and like, you know, it was very quick transition from when Biden dropped out, was the fact that Trump and Vance did a really good job of going on all of these shows. Like they got the sort of bro melee kind of manosphere culture
Totally.
down. And in order to combat that, it's not, you don't just put her on Call Her Daddy and say, okay, that's fine. You're hitting your own audience with that. To me, I would have absolutely, I mean, I don't know if I'm allowed to share this, but like, I wasn't allowed to sell at the time. But I remember getting in our vetting, like 12 months before the campaign, like we got a brief from Trump's campaign about being on podcast and whether we or not we do host reads, have host endorsements. Like to me, that's our industry using their know-how and people within this industry to consult the people on that side of the political spectrum. While as our side, we're like, okay, how can I go spend as much money on television so I get my next house in, I don't know, Jackson Hole or the Caribbean.
Democratic digital strategy. It's like
it's gotten better.
It's gotten better. Okay.
I feel like Obama had a thing in 2008.
He used Facebook when it first came out real well.
Since then, it hasn't really been.
It's interesting to me, just a common theme we find on the show with our guests of people who kind of predict the future in some ways or predict what's going to be popular. And I've always found that interesting with politics, where I'm like, if you're supposed to be like leading and in power, and you're not even thinking, you're not looking at that in any way and just thinking about the now, it's never really made sense to me. And I think they call it the podcast election, don't they?
I think that's what they dubbed it.
And I remember being like, who is telling her not to, like, she needs to go on these podcasts? But what is that? Even though podcast is it's not legitimate to a lot of people. What is the legitimacy?
Las Culturistas, I think, turned them down, and I think Boeing was like, I'm not qualified to, I think he would interview a president, like a Democratic president's candidate now, but at the time was like, we're not qualified to facilitate.
They didn't even come on our shows,
so fucking
though.
liberal, by the way.
But bluntly, they didn't even come on our shows. And the thing is when you have people on our side that maybe were disillusioned and didn't turn up to vote for one reason or another, whether it be, war in the Middle East or, healthcare issues or things that they thought in terms of inflation, that they weren't motivated or excited to go out and vote. Not coming on our show is a mistake.
Yeah,
they didn't have a message, really.
Well, it was hard to kind of put that together, but for me, like the issue was not 2024. It was 2016 when I'd go back to the place where I worked. And when I meet some of these people and they'd be like, we're not going to do this. And that kind of led up to, that election. And so from like a revenue perspective, we would have loved to have these types of things in. But when I'm seeing them just throwing money away at things that did not make sense, when they could have literally done what Trump did, which is the value he got by going on these shows was earned media. And then he also was, I bet he was paying for some of these appearances because we got a brief for it. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to share that, but whatever. For me, like,
it
was a mistake.
Yeah, totally.
And 2028 might not be the podcast election. It might be like the vertical
YouTube.
video, TikTok, like what have you, right?
Election.
Like, but I think these are things we have to start planning for.
Why do you think why do you think that happens? Why do you think do you think it's just people not wanting to accept change?
I think that's probably it, right? Like, I think that there's definitely this is what worked in the past, this is what worked in the future. Like, I'm guilty of it, right? Like, I still think the baked in ad is the best. But, the endorsement has been around for what, like over like 60, 70 years now in radio, like, and it's still translated it all its way up, right? And I think like the targeting is crazy. Like the challenge that our side is going to face is who owns these platforms and whether or not they're going to give you the ability, because one of the things I'll come back to podcasting with and the revenue side, like that RSS, it's an even playing field. Like if you're on YouTube or Meta or X or whatever the hell it's called these days, like there are people who can put their finger on the scale and your stuff will not be consumed, right? Even if you're spending money for it. So that's a challenge.
So there's like a belief, I think, in our industry right now that because podcasting isn't properly defined, we are not gaining traction with advertisers. Like, do you believe that like that's a core issue for us as a channel? Like the definition of what a podcast is like,
I think that's like
holding us back.
Probably a couple years old, right? Like I think that we've all kind of established that a podcast is something that you can consume, like as long as you can listen to it. Like some people will watch it, other people will listen to it. That to me is the baseline definition of a podcast. But I think that the challenge right now for our industry isn't that. It's more about the fact of, can a publisher or creator have an ad that their small team can put throughout, have one thing that allow it to, upload to all these different fragmented facets, and can an advertiser measure that across all of those facets continuously without the burden being put on the creator or the advertiser? Because that's the biggest challenge. Because when you're looking at, I'll bring it back to Meta, right? Like, you can target, they're using everyone's data, whether you want them to or not. There's ways to kind of just like hyper target to see the impressions in real time. With a podcast, like, you can see that on video and audio, but you have now this definition of like, is it an impression? Is it a play? Is it something that has been actually consumed, right? Yeah. And those definitions, I think, are what are holding advertisers back. But with that said, right?
Can I just say it's like the conversation is holding us back, not the definition.
Agreed. 100%.
I feel like the fact that we keep on having the conversation.
But we have it at every conference.
I'm so over it.
Correct.
And it's like, for me, it's like a podcast is distributed on RSS.
Yeah.
Netflix, if you're not distributing your podcast on RSS, you're not a podcast. You're television.
Correct. You might have mics in the frame though, right?
Well, yeah, you can borrow the aesthetic, but like RSS is like key. So that's like, it's a simple definition to me. Like, Apple and
I'm happy with Apple, by the way,
and HSL, like, distribute it through an enclosure tag on an RSS feed, not via an API. Hopefully they graduate to where I can put a file in an RSS feed, and then that can get pulled into whatever platform.
It's what it used to be. Do you remember when my friend in 2005, I'm going to date myself. My very first job was at Blockbuster Video.
Hell yeah.
And my boss at Blockbuster.
Hey, that's cool.
Yeah.
That is
in
cool.
high school. My boss at Blockbuster had this show, and he called it The Clip Show. And he was uploading it on iTunes, RSS video at the time, and he was reviewing movies that he would pick from Blockbuster.
Yeah.
And it was
pioneer.
There was video.
Yeah.
It was not audio.
Yeah.
You could go in there. It would take forever to download because it was like, 30 minutes of actual video in 2005, and we all had like, what was it, DSL back in the day? I'm really dating myself. I'm turning 40
You're dating yourself hard.
Yeah. But
which I love.
Regardless, like, you could
I graduated 2 years after you, so we're there.
You could it was still video. So like, we need to get back to that. Like, obviously there's these other platforms that have helped the industry in terms of discovery, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's really important. But we need them to open up a little bit.
They
don't make enough money regardless.
Why are our formal and or informal institutions, like trade associations, letting us down in this regard? We have these groups that are saying we're here to like advance our industry, and yet 5 years later, like, we're still in this like quagmire swamp of like not making progress because we're focused on a definition that the audience has already defined for themselves.
Do you want the blunt answer?
Yes.
The blunt answer is because, just like in politics, there's a lot of money and interests involved in this. Like, if I am somebody else, I'm not going to necessarily want that definition defined. It's a resourcing headache, engineering headache for me. It's something that doesn't suit my commercial financial interests, right? And if it's not like the pinnacle of my business model, I'm not going to operate on it. I think every company is probably thinking that way. And so for current events based networks, right, like for us, like if I had to insert an ad in every single one of my shows, and I have 4 ad ops people, mind you, 4, which is a lot for like an industry, like, that would take a ridiculous amount of work. It would not be implemented, and people are going to be like, AI this, AI that. AI cannot do it across all these different platforms. And honestly, like, we're human people first, like at Crooked. So from our perspective, it's a tool. It can help us. Like, it can do research, it can find the things, but it's not going to replace genuine people, because it just can't. And so, like, But if I'm a company whose business model isn't about placing ads in current events-based shows, and my business model is around like, how do I grow shareholder value or the other actual revenue driving portion of what I do, it's probably not going to be something that even makes it into the meeting with the executives. And so from that perspective, it's about how do we find a compromise, a middle ground to make this work? Is it, allowing an attribution service to do it? Is it creating something else, innovating a platform that can upload this to every single one of these platforms so that creators can just do what they do best and create content? I don't know what the answer is. I think some very smart people.
Well, it's RSS.
I agree with you. It is RSS. It is RSS.
We have it.
But
in the pursuit of walled gardens, like, does Spotify want to participate with RSS?
But I don't know, right? Like, and does YouTube want to participate with it?
Definitely not.
Correct. And so that's the challenge for a publisher or creator, is that you can't negate these channels because that's where consumption is happening. But I wholeheartedly agree with you 100%.
Yeah. Where do you think things are going on the ad side? Like,
on the ad side?
Where are they getting more personal, more content creator-y,
I think
influencer-y?
I think it's probably the latter, unfortunately. I think that the organic, sitting down, bantering nature of podcast ads that have come to define what we do. I mean, from my own, bleeding heart, that's what I like to consume. I think Crooked, one of the benefits and things that we've done so well over the years has been its comic relief to Pod Save America, to listen to John and Tommy go out from very serious subject matters to making fun of themselves during the ad reads, making fun of Lovett putting together a security system, or Tommy drinking some smoothie in the morning with a supplement in it, right? And they'll make fun of each other because these are their personalities. And that's where you really get the ethos of who they are. And I think that as we've kind of graduated forward and brand safety and all this stuff, you kind of lose that. And so what I'm seeing that might start to replace it is, if we don't get this right, we're going to lose money to other media platforms. And so that's I'd say one of my bigger concerns for the industry in terms of revenue, but I still don't think anything can beat the engagement of a tuned in audience that actually cares about the show, because attention spans on these other channels are very brief. You're scrolling, you're flipping 15 seconds, 30 seconds, reels, TikToks, whatever. That's not going to resonate with you. And even if you get served that ad in 15 different creators' feeds, to me, it's just top of funnel awareness. It's not actually Dane and I sitting here having a conversation about why, this beer that we drank last weekend is the best beer of our lives. You know what I mean? That to me is much more resonant with somebody who's actually paying attention.
Totally. So there's a subtlety to the selling, in other words, rather than, because I found in comedy, I was just make the ads another joke.
Yeah,
without punching down and making fun of the ad. But that's how you should do it, so people want to watch it to see the comedy too. And then by accident you'll sell more. Whereas there's a lot of comedians I worked with where they would put on a serious drama face whenever they had to do ads, and I was always kind
of like a scoff.
You're gonna because
you can tell when a host likes a product or doesn't. It's very obvious. And when they actually use it, or if it makes sense.
Adam Friedland has some really terrible ads for the brands that he works with.
They're unique though.
They're
very bizarre.
But he's always whatever, here we are. Here's the ad. No, just pretty standard brands, but the way he does it. Which I don't even know if I was the brand on the other side, I'd be come on, you gotta do that again.
There's probably a creative fee to some of those too. I saw one with a bunch of old 90s TV screens in a room for, I forget, it was Aura frames or something. But for me, I think the thing that gives me hope is the fact that I feel society is smart enough to realize that when an influencer, even an A-list celebrity is on a commercial, people are kind of instinctively pushing back on that as you are leaning into something because you're being paid for it. And I think that podcasting can still maintain its place if it keeps what has worked holistically.
It's probably why like the celebrity brand has been on the rise, because it's like, oh, it's their brand, so they must care about it because their name is slapped onto this product that like had an existing supply chain attached to it already.
Exactly.
Like the tequila brand that already existed, let's just put The Rock's name on it and let him sell it, and it's, of course, he's like passionate about it because it's his brand.
I feel like people are getting deprogrammed and propaganda is starting to be seen in this way. So I agree with like that idea that it's almost like if Kylie got attached to the Meta glasses and we were just all making fun of them, and not in the kind of way where like we're gonna buy them. We're like,
these are horrendous.
I'm gonna punch someone wearing them.
Yeah, like they're cringe. My brother.
Sorry,
has
don't
a hairstyle.
videotape me. You don't have my permission.
Yeah. That is the most interesting part of the ads to me, where it's like it has to be authentic. Is there such thing as an authentic ad read?
I think there is. Like, you know, the guys, they like to indulge in a cocktail or two from time to time. I've been with them, and we've got a sponsor called Z-Biotics, and you're not allowed to say certain words in it, but they will say how, you know, you take it before you drink, and they have a box of it in their office. And ironically, you know, one of them got married this year, and they came to me and they're like, we don't want them to send it. We want to order like this for everyone at the wedding, not because, and we're not going to use the code because we just want to order it because we need to make sure that everyone's going to have this. And every time they have an event where they may or may not be consuming alcohol, then they will come and ask, like, do you have any of these? Because I really want to like feel good the next day. And you can hear that in the integrations with that product, right? It's harder for like, you know, if you're asking somebody to do something with like financial services or insurance or like medical like things, you can't necessarily tell a host who doesn't have a medical issue to like endorse a product if they've got a full head of hair or like, you know, what have you, right? Like they can speak implied or anecdotally about somebody.
My cousin.
Correct. Yes. But like, you know, we still see that work from time to time. There's not an issue with that. But I feel like the key to what we do is that banter. And like, if you have a second host in the room to make sure that you're having it doesn't even have to be about the product. You can talk about what you did last week and weave it in a way that makes sense. I used to sit in on all the ad reads, and bluntly, it's the funnest time of their calendar because it's funny. It's comic relief. Yeah. They don't maybe like doing it every week, but like.
Yeah. Would you say though, content wise, like it's an additional thing you need to produce and write and think up creative, or are they kind of just doing it? Because that was always my thing. I'm like, oh, another thing I have to kind of structure right for them is, and I always was like, it should be the ad companies.
Well, you know,
they're not creative, so.
That's the thing. Like sometimes you'll just get bullet points. You're like, what are these things, right? Like for me, the best integration is a product you use, one that you can go off the cuff and then come back to whatever's in the essence of what you are forced to read. I think if there's a way to weave it into the context of what you're speaking to, that makes sense. But again, when we were first buying this, people would do the ad breaks literally as they were doing the episode. We would stop right now and talk about, you know, whatever this drink I have and how awesome it is. But you know, now because you're having to do a video version of this, because you're having to upload in different places, because some people sell it not as an embedded asset within the entirety of the episode wherever it may be published, it makes it harder in the sense that you have to kind of schedule time, potentially do a creative around it. So we've in a sense
all that's being given to the brand for free. Like
there
are like digital agencies that are being paid to make. There's like a production line item for advertising that isn't integrated into the.
And you're getting an endorsement.
That was always my fucking frustration. Yeah, I was like, we're giving you such a high percentage, and I have to do this. It's like, and then they'd be like, well, they're not creative or whatever. It's like, well, hire somebody creative. I don't know. But like, this should be a product this should be part of the product that you're selling us. If you want to sell these products, why are you putting it all on us to create entirely new stuff? And I always would just kind of bang heads with the network about it because they would be like, can you make the ads like more fun and interesting? And I'd be like, that takes time.
It does.
Yeah. And it takes like effort. And I would try to do it, but it's like, they're also comedians, so it's impossible to make them
it's like
talk
a $22 CPM.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? But having launched some of these brands, like the ones that I'm most proud of, because I launched a lot of big brands' first podcast campaigns, is you're on the phone with these people and they're like, we have a runway of 3 months. If this doesn't work, the company's not going to work. And so from my perspective, it was always about finding the balance, right? Like when I was buying and when I sell at Crooked, a lot of the brands that I first started with at Crooked, they came in direct, right? And so for me, it was like, if you give me access to your back end data and your goals, I'm going to price this to a point that is going to be mutually beneficial, one for us and two for you. Because what I think a lot of the creators don't understand is if they're not seeing what's there, they're not going to continue. So in my mind, it's like, I'm not going to go gouge someone for as much money as I can out of the gate. I need to figure out how to scale this so that they're staying on. And we've had brands that have been on for, our entire existence, like over 9 years. And to me, I think that's a credit to the way that they did do the ads. And obviously you've got people who wrote speeches for former President Obama doing your ads. Like they're going to find fun ways to do it. But I hear what you're saying though.
There's very smart.
I hear what you're saying though. You're getting a lot of value.
Yeah.
And I think that from an industry perspective, and if you are an advertiser, like to your point, like I can go to a creative agency, I'm going to pay them a lot of money to come up with concepts, and then I have to pay, a talent fee in order to even get them to consider doing this, and then we're going to pay them to do the actual commercial, right?
I guess it is how much the artist put into, but shout out to producers, because that's
shout out to producers,
because that's another fucking thing you have to do as a producer is try to make the ads interesting, and it's a lot.
It sucks. I have empathy.
And you have to get all of the points correct.
Yep.
And if you say one word, and it's like, okay, well then you just lost.
And shout out to AdOps, because they're the ones who get all that stuff through. They make sure you get the product.
AdOps needs to be treated like a kindergarten teacher, like one teacher
and they need to be paid better
20 shows.
Kindergarten teachers need to be paid better, as do AdOps.
Yeah.
Shout out to AdOps and kindergarten teachers.
Shout out Amy.
If we as an industry didn't go to another conference made by our industry, would we survive? Or would we be in a better place? Or
I think like the good thing about these conferences is that that's where I ended up meeting one of the Italian companies that, like the Italian company that did Shadow Kingdom. Like London is a great conference.
Yeah, Podcast Show London. Shout out to them. That's like the one conference that I feel like it brings all of the U.S. and the international together.
I think, listen, these industry events, like when you're just starting out in your career, I think they're really important. Yeah. Like to me, you get to meet people who may have more experience than you.
Yep.
You get to know people who you can feel the people who are passionate, like people who I've worked with or have come to work with us. Like I've met them at these events. So I think that there is a networking element to this that's important.
Send the AdOps team too. Like I feel like that's like another thing, like the kind of like middle to lower junior employees don't get to go to these events, and it actually is probably a really good thing for them specifically to go to these events.
I 100% agree. I think the hardest thing
is the same people over and over again, and I'm like, I'll catch you.
The hardest thing is a lot of these companies don't have the budgets to send all of these folks, and I agree with you. I think like I'm encouraged by what could be at some of these things. I think South by, there's a potential. I mean, we met with the actual organizers of South by after South by this year and gave some feedback.
That's awesome.
And I think that trying to integrate with more of their less podcast type events that they have going on, to me, I think that's actually a benefit for our industry, because they have film and TV and tech and, a whole bunch of like VC, which whatever, like, but being in those rooms makes sense. I went to Web Summit in Lisbon last year. They invited our CEO. She could not go. She sent me. And, I met a lot of people there that I would have not otherwise have met, who were really excited about what we were doing and had different ideas. I think that
you're talking about like the crossover between other industries, like
I think it's important.
Podcasting and tech, education, culture.
I think that, our industry conferences serve a purpose in order to, from a revenue perspective, it's the only place I can see a lot of the people I work with from a day-to-day basis. And I think that's really important.
Efficient in that way.
It's, you know, it's exhausting because we'll have 25 to 30 meetings over 3 days and all of the other accoutrements and things that we have to attend to. And
you're going to sleep at 3 a.m. and then you're waking up at 7.
Yeah, exactly.
I would like to say that I am staunchly anti-conference.
It's okay.
These two are very pro.
I'm like in between. I'm in between.
I like them and I appreciate them. I used to plan them.
Ugh.
Yeah, that's the one thing. Like
and you guys have been doing events a little bit, right?
Yeah, we've got Crooked Con. We did our inaugural Crooked Con last year. It was at the. We had so many people sign up that we had to move it into the Ronald Reagan, which was hilarious.
Yeah,
that's a great
Crooked
joke.
Con is happening in the Ronald Reagan Center.
You can't
in
accept
DC.
an advertiser, but you can have an event in the Ronald
Well, it was just
Reagan.
funny because, you know, that was the name of the building, but it was you know, perfectly set up to accommodate the more people we had. We had about 2,500 people last year. We had 5 sort of what we think maybe 28 hopefuls. We had a lot of creators, and to their credit, they did a really good job of getting us out there. It's our version of CPAC. I think we're going to have double that amount this year. I think we sold like 1,000 tickets in the first like 2 weeks. It's happening in November. It'll either be a really good time to celebrate because it's happening right after the midterms, or it'll be kind of like an autopsy, like how do we move going forward event. But who knows? Maybe the election won't be called and there'll be FBI people taking ballot boxes and we'll be fighting the fight.
I actually have a question that I've always wanted to ask a Crooked employee or host. Did the ads change when a Democrat became president?
No, the ad stayed the same. I think
Did listenership change?
Listenership actually was, you know, I think like obviously when you're in the opposition, it helps. But I don't think it went like, it didn't change too drastically.
Okay.
I think that the things that, you know, we're really lucky in the sense that we launched when RSS was very prevalent. So our audio audience is very high on our shows that launched then. I think that what you do see though is like on YouTube, right? Like if you say certain things, sometimes your episodes don't necessarily hit the numbers that you've seen on average. If you say other things, then they explode, right? I think that changes from time to time.
This isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I think when you look at the distribution of Midas Touch Network specifically, it's like 80-90% YouTube and video and like a small percentage audio, because it's like difficult to launch a strong RSS based show today.
Correct.
I was also like, they literally started like right around when 2016, right? Like when Trump.
It was 2017. What ended up happening was, and I used to buy their predecessor, Keeping It 1600, while I was at Oxford Road.
Yeah.
And I had just left Oxford Road. I went to a company at the time. It was called the worst name that you could ever be called, Digital Media without the I, DGITAL.
Oh,
and then they renamed it to Cadence 13. But I remember going to the people I was working for and being like, they'd be like, we're going to get this show. And I was like, which one? I was like, we're looking at the show. It was like on the Ringer. Bill Simmons didn't want sports and politics to mix. I was like, Keeping It 1600. They're like, yes. Like, please get that today. Like, I sold the first ads into the first episode of it.
Wow.
It launched as Obama's final interview as president right before Trump got inaugurated. And I remember selling it for what I had bought it for, which was 125,000 downloads at the time. Now we call it all impressions, right? That's another problem with our industry. We can get into that now. And that first episode did at the time like 1.7 or 1.8 million like downloads, and we were all just like, oh my god, like what do we do? Because I sold like a big annual to about 3 or 4 sponsors in this, being like, you're gonna want to be in this, and being like, there's nothing I can do. Like these people are gonna get 20x what they paid for.
Yeah. Do you think, how much of that do you think is timing?
Timing for sure. A lot of this is timing. We have a show on our network that's really popular called Strict Scrutiny. It's a Supreme Court podcast. I remember when we picked it up, I looked at it and I was like, it does 10,000 an episode. Like this is not going to make us money. And 2 months after it launched, and these are 3 female women, like very brilliant female law professors. And Roe v. Wade got overturned, and that thing absolutely like catapulted. And now it's like one of the biggest shows on our network. But obviously, timing has a lot to do with it. If you hit things in the right moment, if you have friends at the networks or Apple or Spotify or YouTube, they can help you get ahead.
And I knew that Trump was winning because of the shows that I had on my network and how they were represented, which was like women. And I was like, well, at least our numbers will probably go up, because there is something to be said for a community coming together against like a collective evil or whatever. And I hate to say that, but I've always wanted to ask Crooked, because I was like, man, the timing of that, like the timing of them starting that show right after everybody wanted to like hear their thoughts said on a show or like vent about what was happening, because it was such a confusing, like, what the fuck is happening? And I was always kind of obsessed with like the timing. So, but
you got to think of like, if you're Bill Simmons, like, I get you don't want sports and politics to mix, but like, to allow them to go start their own thing, that was like,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
Wait, but he just got Adam Friedland, and that's all.
I mean, that's all Spotify, right? But I feel like whoever's been head of that, I mean, it's gone through like him. Was it Max Cutler there for a bit?
Yeah, he's not with Pave or launched Pave.
It is what it is. It's an incestuous industry. That's for sure. Everybody knows each other.
That's good to know. I didn't know that as an outsider.
Yeah, no, it is.
Would you consider yourself a core lord of podcasting?
I don't even know what that term is. Can you define it for me?
Dane,
are you a core lord? I'm not going to define it for you. It's just like OG, basically.
Yeah, I'm probably an OG at this point. I've been in like since
with the ability to like influence
12 plus years. I think I have a pretty good like megaphone. I don't really use it as much as I'd like to.
Have you said no to anyone, either partnerships or opportunities? Like, are you used to saying no?
I probably I was in a meeting the other day and somebody pulled me aside and they're like, you said no in a lot of our meetings. Like, people are like, when is Giancarlo going to say yes? So I think like internally and sometimes externally, I do say no. I generally sometimes I don't like a ton of conflict, but I don't have a filter. I'm very direct about stuff. So
I always say I don't like conflict, but I accidentally start it by talking.
I like
that.
Well, this is fun.
Yeah.
We appreciate you coming
Thanks
on.
for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to This Is TV Now, a new podcast from Good Tape Magazine. Today's episode was engineered by Thomas Ouellette and both mixed and edited by Fred Muñoz with Sounds Visual Studio. The artwork was designed by Sami Wittwer for Good Tape Studio with photography by Maggie Shannon. Our theme song is New Me Win by Bryan B. And if you're following us on social media, at This Is TV Now on all platforms, our clips were designed by Andrew Callaway. If you're enjoying the show, we'd appreciate you getting the word out. Rate and review the show, share with a friend, email a colleague, or better yet, post this episode on LinkedIn. That's it for today. See you next time.